Hi everyone, and welcome to our ISS webinar for online instructional practices for English and social studies. This is our, I think, 9th or 10th webinar that we've had this year, and it really came together from a call out to our educators internationally who had already gone online prior to the whole rest of the world shutting down, and asking them to try to help out educators as they were starting to navigate into online learning. Obviously, the world has changed quite rapidly, and the need and desire to connect educators around the world has grown exponentially. And so this week, we're really lucky to have specialists, our teachers who have been teaching English and social studies in a variety of contexts in all different aspects of the world and in all different grade levels, come and help us today to navigate what this is going to look like. To begin with, we are going to start off by, well, first of all, you'll see two different options at the bottom of your screen. At the bottom of your screen, you will
I think Dana's has gotten stuck a little bit. This is Laura Benson from ISS, and we're going to let our panelists introduce themselves at this time. Megan, can we start with you?
Hi everyone, my name is Megan Godek. I have been working internationally for 6 years. I started in South Korea for 4 years, and this is now my second year in Hong Kong. I work at Hong Kong International School, and I teach grade 5. We have been online since February 3rd, and today was actually our first day back. So we have our grade 5 students came back for half the day today, and then next week we'll continue the students going back for half a day. And I am really looking forward to sharing everything that we've been doing for the past over 100 days.
Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Hi, my name is Evelyn Lichtenauer. I've been teaching for 18 years, and the past 8 years I've been international. I've been in Bogota, Colombia, and Sumatra, Indonesia, which is where we were actually repositioned out of back in March. So we've been online since March, and I teach grades 5 through 8, language arts and social studies, but I help out in elementary as well.
Thank you. Justin. Thank you.
Hi everyone.
Yeah. All right.
Hi everyone. My name's Justin. I live in Saigon. I've been teaching internationally for 15 years, Korea, China, and Vietnam, respectively. I teach at the International School of Ho Chi Minh City, grade 5, IB PYP teacher. We finished online learning after 13 weeks, and we're delivering a hybrid now for those who are in our classroom and overseas.
Great to have you all. And Amy.
Hello, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. We, on a similar boat with Megan and Justin. We have been on remote learning and remote teaching for over 15 weeks. This is our 15th week. And sorry, I teach at the American School in Guangzhou. So we just started as well this week, having our 4th and 5th grades back for half days. And our high school and middle school have been back for the last few weeks.
Thrilled to have you. I'm going to hand it back over to Dana. We had a quick tech problem, but she's with us. Dana, thanks.
No problem. Thanks, Laura. And if you guys don't know, this is Laura Benson. Did you get a chance to introduce yourself, Laura?
Just very quickly, it's great to be with you all, and we're just thrilled to have this time with these incredible panelists. I am Laura Benson. I'm Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, and just very blessed to gain this wisdom and these shared practices with everyone. Dana will lead us off now, and I'll see you guys in a minute.
And hi, everyone. I'm Dana Watts. I'm the Director of Research and Development at International School Services. And with us also on the sidelines is our fabulous colleague, John Burns, who's helping us take care of all the tech issues and the Q&A as well. Today, we're going to talk about a few different things, and then we're going to open it up to Q&A. So first, we're going to talk about how we build community in an online environment within English and social studies. Then we're going to talk about best practices and some strategies for teaching ELA online with primary students. Then we're going to talk about secondary students and specific strategies for that. Then we'll be talking about social studies in the elementary, then social studies in the secondary. Then we're going to be talking about what does that look like in the fall. And then we're going to open it up to Q&A, and you can ask whatever questions you might have, especially about reopening hybrid models. How are we doing? What does this look like? So, and we will be posting resources in the chat. So to start us off with question number one, how are you building community and confidence within your specific context areas online? Amy, would you like to get us started with that question?
Sure, I would love to. So I think one of the things that we do at our school is just making sure that everyone comes in. So coming from, our counselors posting activities and being connected with the students, but our librarian and our principal do weekly read alouds for the kids to join. And on top of that, just making sure that there are ways for students to be able to communicate and be able to chat with one another, whether that's in Zoom or through, we use the Seesaw platform to make comments, and they're able to do audio recordings of their thinking. So I think that's really important to be able to hear their voices as well as ours, and it not being in the same time as well.
That's great, thank you. And Megan, did you want to add on to that?
Yeah, ours, we do a lot of things very similar to what Amy was saying. We try to have everyone in the school connected to the students. We have our students on Zoom. This is before we started in classroom teaching today, but we were having our students online for 2 hours in the morning. And it was really nice because we would start each day with a morning meeting, a virtual morning meeting. And we would do things like the kids would have a morning message that they would watch. And so they would watch that before they came. And one of my coworkers and we decided to get real creative. And part of our morning message was, where were we all around Hong Kong? And so the kids would have to guess. And it was nice because they were able to connect with different things. And like, we would go to a restaurant and they'd be like, oh, we tried that restaurant too. And so they really liked to see their teachers doing things that they were also able to do. And so that just automatically built that community very nicely. And the kids really just enjoyed seeing each other. And that social aspect of it was so important for us to build before we even went into the academic side.
Oh, that's wonderful. Thank you. And Evelyn, did you have something else?
Teaching middle school, it's just such a chaotic time for kids in general before you throw in a pandemic and repositioning and all that. So we have been really conscious about trying to nurture the social emotional needs of the kids. And so we don't have a regular morning meeting. Our kids are spread out all over the world right now. So we do have a middle school meetup. We get all the kids together in one Zoom once a week, and we have little challenges for them and questions, and try to get them to really interact with each other rather than us, because the rest of the week, because we're so spread out, we're really meeting one-on-one with their teachers. And so, but it's been really fun. Like Earth Day, everybody showed up for Team Earth in some way, blue hair and face paints and Zoom backgrounds. So just little silly things that are kind of similar to what we would have been doing at school, but that they can accomplish with limited supplies wherever they are, because we left really quickly and they don't have a lot of things.
Oh, those are fantastic ideas. Thank you so much. I think building community is just so important in this. I mean, that's what we're missing, right? And so appreciate all those ideas. For question number 2, what are some of the best practices and strategies for teaching English language arts online with primary students? There are some unique issues that can happen with our primary students in trying to do this online, and how long we're spending online. Amy, do you want to start us off with that question?
Sure. I think, I'm sure we've all experienced this, that taking things slow is okay, and making sure that, that they are supported in that way. And it's fine. It's a different pace. But also it gives a really great opportunity to revisit some texts that you have already visited for the beginning of the year. And you're able to really take notice of those mentor texts that you have used previously, or introduce something new, but be okay with the fact that, it'll take you 2 weeks of going over that. And I think, again, as I mentioned before, is to have those opportunities for students to converse on whatever platform you use, whether, we use Zoom to converse, and we also, as I mentioned, use Seesaw as a way to be able for kids to hear each other. And then just being able to see what specifically they need with conversation, like we would normally do in the classroom during conferring.
Wonderful. Justin, I'm going to move on to you, and then we'll move on to Tara because she just joined us, and so, but she'll go next. So Justin, we'll let you go first.
I think to build on Amy's ideas, keeping it simple is really important. I think, there's a wealth of tech companies out there that are offering free things. However, you just also have to consider that you're not face-to-face to be able to model and scaffold a lot of those technological programs. So I think, just considering what works best in your platform and keeping it simple, breaking things down to their finest nuance. So yes, if you do have bigger inquiries going on, I think taking it slow is definitely an important strategy, and just honoring that asynchronous aspect of learning, that everybody is learning at different time zones, different paces, and just kind of being a little bit more lenient in terms of due date and when things do get done. I would really highly recommend thinking about doing a screencast lesson, just really taking down those finer concepts to model using whiteboards, Jamboards, whatever you will. And just trying to facilitate, you have all these feedback options within their home. So giving that multiple steps for feedback and conferencing, whether they be one-to-one or giving yourself office hours around a certain aspect of language learning, such as inquiry, reading, writing, things of the sort. So those have been some strategies that have worked really well for us.
Those are great.
And again, just trying to keep things transdisciplinary. So if you are learning about, if you have an inquiry into media, looking at persuasive writing, and then looking at persuasive techniques in text, and just reading texts that do have persuasive techniques, identifying hyperboles and other things that I guess people use to persuade others. So.
That's such a good important point, especially with transdisciplinary, and how do we start to help students make connections in all these different areas. I want to take a quick moment. So we were having trouble getting Tara in before, so I want to welcome Tara to the webinar. Welcome. Will you introduce yourself real quick?
Yes, hi. I'm sorry that I'm late. I am located in Mozambique, Africa. And I'm actually in a small town called Tofu. And of course, as soon as I needed the internet, it wouldn't work. So, but now I'm here.
We totally understand. Welcome.
We totally understand.
Yeah, I'd love to show off where I am, because I feel like, can you believe that's not a background?
Fantastic.
Yeah, it is great. My kids and husband are at the beach right now, which is also great, because how often do any of us get a moment by ourselves anymore? Oh, okay. So I'm sorry. I am by training, I'm a literacy and language specialist. I've been, I have a degree in human development and psychology with a concentration in language and literacy from Harvard. I've been an educator for, Jesus Louises, 19 years, which I can't believe that happened, but it did. And I specialize more in elementary, but I actually have worked all the way up with kids to 22 years old.
Fantastic. We were just talking about question number 2, and we were talking about how what are some of the best strategies or practices that you've seen working for English language arts online with our primary students? Did you have anything you wanted to jump in with that or add to that?
Well, I hope I'm not being redundant. Does anybody have, with that question, a specific learner in mind that they would really like some details about?
Well, right now they're not able to actually ask you that
Answer.
question. So
because
yeah,
this
yeah.
is not everybody. This is just the
Yeah,
panel. Okay.
Yeah. This is just
All
the
right.
panel.
So
And
I think what I think is most important is trying to find ways to use other senses besides just looking at the computer, right? So that's why I put in the note something about this letter tiles thing to so that they can touch it. It is a very difficult thing to use this medium for young learners, and then if a young learner has ADHD, it's really not the platform for them. I also think that just having them read a lot. There is a woman that maybe everybody is familiar with. I think she's called the Book Whisperer, where basically she was a 6th grade teacher and just said, you know what you guys are going to do this year? You're going to read a ton. So we need to truly, unless a child is having needs explicit instruction, phonological awareness, just reading a ton is going to be important. One thing I think would be really helpful that I haven't seen people do enough is storytelling. So when you have a small group of students, oh my gosh, my dog's on too. When you have a small group of students sorry, it's my French bulldog, a small group of students in a Zoom or whatever you're using, do some oral storytelling and have them add on to the story. And because one thing I think we expect out of children that is kind of hard for them to grasp is when we say, oh, tell a story or a narrative, right? Well, when we go out as adults to a dinner party or something, when someone's like, oh, what did you do last weekend? We'd be like, oh, I went to the beach. It was really beautiful. And in a child's story, that would be showing and not telling and etc. But it's unnatural to say, the waves burst up to the beach. I felt the wind, blah, 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 blah. So, but it is very natural in oral storytelling. So the more we have them telling stories and adding to stories that has that true narrative voice and storyline, the better they're going to be in all their literacies.
I love that. Thank you. And oral storytelling is one of my most favorites. And so thank you so much. Evelyn, do you want to talk to us about what are some strategies specifically for teaching English language arts with our secondary students? Do you have some tips and tricks for us regarding that?
I don't know if it's so much tips and tricks or if it's just the nature of the group of students that I have and coming out of the school that I came from. But I did feel like, you know, if we were to go back to pre-pandemic times and set ourselves up to be successful for this endeavor, I think my little school is actually set up pretty well. We're remote. We're in a more rural part of Indonesia. And so we're set up, the middle school students are one-to-one. We're Mac school. We have everything through, so all the kids, most of the kids have Macs. We have Google Suite. We've been using Google Classroom. So all of these systems were already in place when we all took off and spread out throughout the world. I think one of the things that happens with this particular group of secondary students is they're considered the digital natives, and there's this idea that they just naturally understand how technology works, and they do not. So because we were one-to-one, because we were already set up to work digitally, it's difficult to get textbooks into Sumatra, Indonesia sometimes. It's difficult to get materials. So we learned and adapted to use the internet. So our kids have had a lot of explicit instruction. And so a lot of what I'm doing as a language arts teacher is continuing routines that were already happening and established in the classroom. The kids know how to do them on their own. But also what was said earlier, I think Amy said it, about just, you know, going slow, much slower than you went in the past, and being super understanding about deadlines. Again, people think older kids, they should have this, they got it. We don't know what's on the other side of the screen. And just keeping that in mind. We have no idea what's going on at home.
And I think that social emotional piece is huge. I see it with my own kids, and some days they're having great days, and other days it's just like, oh my God, what happened? What happened in between the past, 10 minutes? Tara, did you just want to add something there? I noticed you're on mute.
Thank you. I'm studying and halfway through to being a ADHD life coach for adolescents, and children, adolescents, and adults. I am an adult with ADHD, so I'm very, it's obviously a powerful motivator to make sure that other kids don't feel stupid throughout their education, like maybe I did. But one thing I thought would have been really interesting with the middle schoolers is to take a step back, maybe away from the content itself. Literature offers illustrative examples of many things, so you can do a lot of this through literature, but to kind of draw their attention to their perception of time and time going by and what it means to be organized. Because as Evelyn was saying, there, especially in middle school, for some reason, there's this expectation like they know things, and they don't. So maybe working with them in a way that you're helping them explore the self. Are you a task-oriented person? Are you a time-oriented person? If you're task-oriented, this is how you should plan. If you're time-oriented, this is how you should plan. But just bringing any kind of self-awareness to how time works, tallying how much time things take. Did you know that when you take a shower, it actually takes an hour, and you said it took 15 minutes? But if there's a way to do this in maybe a transdisciplinary way or through some literature, I think it would be very beneficial for that age group.
Great,
Thanks.
thank you. I'm going to keep posting. Our panelists have given me a wealth of resources for both English language arts and social studies. I'll be posting them over here in the chat, but I want to also be able to keep moving on to all the different topics that we've got to cover today. So I'm going to move us on to our next question, which is about specifically about teaching social studies online with our primary students. Amy, did you want to start us off with that question?
Sure. So at AISG, we are a PYP school. So as similar to Justin, trying to integrate as much as we can, and doing it remotely has had its challenges. But I think as a team and as a school, we really, made sure that, for example, that we front loaded. We did a unit on where we are placed in time. About migration. So front loading that with really great literature and making sure that's available, because another big thing I'm sure that many of you guys have faced is just the access to resources. A lot of us had to leave and they weren't able to go back and get certain things, and connectivity is a big issue in China, and what we can access and what we can't. So just making sure that we are mindful of that. So also, we are in this current situation. We have been migrating. So it kind of worked out in that way to discuss those personal stories and to really have those conversations of, comparing our experiences and their personal experiences during this. So that was, one way that we really were able to intertwine and do that within our curriculum. But also what Tara was saying, is just, one of the big things that we do focus as a PYP school is the attributes and these, approaches to learning, these like self-management skills, and how are we as thinkers, and how can we solve these problems if we don't have this resource, or how do we solve problems of, this current curriculum of this pandemic that we're all experiencing. So been interesting.
That's fantastic. And that makes me think about, I know I've heard pushback from some different schools. Are you guys addressing, and this, I'm going to continue on with this question, but are you also talking about what's happening in current events now in the elementary in addition with social studies? And Megan, I'm sorry to throw you under the bus, but I didn't know I've got you listed next. So I'm going to throw that to you.
No, actually, that's great because I was going to talk about that. So we're not PYP, we're a standards-based school at HKIS, and we use the C3 framework, and our students right now are learning about economics. And so we actually posed the question, do the benefits of globalization outweigh the costs? And we chose that question. We actually kind of changed our social studies unit from last year about economics, and we wanted to make sure that it was actually focused around this pandemic. We started about 6 weeks ago doing this economics unit, and we really broke it down for the kids, and we are giving them a lot of ownership around this. And so even just as a grade 5 student, understanding that word globalization is really hard for them. And so we were finding articles that talked about it, and then we also gave them the opportunity to interview their parents and talk to their parents about this, because it is a real world situation. We are, dealing with this every day. We have been talking even about, what is happening when, we're out of toilet paper. Why are we out of toilet paper? And what do different countries have to do with it? And so how do different places react? And in Hong Kong, we were running out of toilet paper, 15 weeks ago, and now that's all stocked up. But now we're out of, I'm trying to think, like salsa. We don't have any salsa well, actually, it's salsa and cheese. And so there's a sign in a lot of the grocery stores right now that says, due to the pandemic, we are not able to get things from Europe. We're not able to get cheeses from Europe. And so how does that affect the world around us? And so we really are looking at what's happening around us, and we are trying to put it into our lessons. And we have broken down our team of 10. We have 10 teachers in grade 5, and we have a group of 3 that's doing social studies. And so what we do is we create videos each day for the students for social studies. And we have made it really fun for the kids, because after a while, the kids don't want to be watching all these videos. So we keep the videos under probably 2 to 3 minutes, and we've created characters. And so they have we put on wigs and we dress up and we make it really fun for the kids. And so that piece, putting that little bit of extra effort into it has really allowed our kids to see that we're having fun with it, and we want them to too. And it's just been really nice to see the kids grow with their understanding around the idea of globalization, around economics, and how the world is truly connected. And in a way, this pandemic has been a good way to highlight that for the students. And I think that some of our students, we are very fortunate to be in an international school, but in some ways they're very sheltered. And so there are things that they are experiencing now that they may not have ever experienced, not being able to access certain things where in other places that's more common outside of this pandemic. So we've kind of taken this pandemic and we have run with it and really allowed our kids to be learning around it.
That's so important. Thank you. And yeah, social studies, I mean, has it ever been more relevant than right now? Oh my gosh, and no matter what age, it's unbelievable. Justin, did you want to add on to that as well?
Yeah, Amy and Megan shared so many great things. I think, just thinking about transfer and conceptual knowledge, so things that are timeless in terms of those connections. So, what does a pandemic offer in terms of lessons that really can connect us to the world? Maybe as a little bonus, just to offer some resources, you know, there was the illustrator of the Gruffalo had a really great elementary-based text there on the coronavirus. So it's a wonderful read aloud, I would say from 2 to 5, maybe even up. Don't forget, with so many, you know, some of these tech companies, sure, they're devils in sheep's clothing, but certainly some of them are sheep. National Geographic has released a lot of wonderful resources. You got, I think, Getty Images, just to name a few. So there's all these wonderful places and things that we can explore, but I think it was Megan who brings up a good point. You know, you have to really take the time, and the power of modeling is certainly crucial. So if you're teaching them how to research a topic, you know, going through and actually modeling through an example of using parenthesis in a Google quote, looking at Newsela and Epic books and all those type of things that are freely available. And I guess the last thing is yeah, you want transdisciplinary projects, but you also want a lot of choice embedded within that, because that's going to empower that intrinsic motivation for your learners. And I think it's been brought up many times before, but yeah, just honoring those ATL skills, or those 21st century skills of thinking about how do we manage our time, and sometimes setting up a one-to-one conference with a learner that maybe you know is having a bit of difficulty, and modeling through how you plan your day and what works best for you, and offering, again, a lot of choice and a lot of voice within that. So co-constructing it as you would in the classroom.
Justin, are you guys using the C3 standards as well at ISHMEC?
No, we're a IBPYP school, so we would be using, yeah, so we would have the ATLs, and we'd be learning through transdisciplinary inquiries, 6 transdisciplinary themes, if you will, that are big, overarching, and conceptual.
Fantastic. Great, thank you. I want to move us on to just the secondary aspect.
I just want to add one more thing, just a practical thing. I know I put it in the notes, but for all of you out there, Pebble Go right now is allowing educators to have accounts for free. And it is the most wonderful source of books and videos, even leveled texts and nonfiction. They even have a few kind of encyclopedic, like history of art, history of warfare, that they actually will read aloud to the student. So take advantage of it, because normally the subscription's very expensive. So just a practical thing there.
Fantastic. And I just put a link to that resource in the chat here. And for those of you who might have joined us late, all these resources and the links will come to you in addition to a transcript of the chat and the Q&A, and a link to the video after the call. It normally takes about 5-6 hours to pull it all together, and it'll be sent to everyone. So if it's hard to keep up with everything, don't worry, you'll get all the resources coming up after the call. Evelyn, did you want to start us off with the secondary aspect of social studies?
Sure. So we are a standards-based school as well. We were actually going to start using C3 this year, but there were all kinds of circumstances that got kind of in the way, but that was something we were looking at last year. But as far as the current events part of social studies, one of the ways that I have helped the kids develop some ideas about the pandemic that are their own is we've created a pandemic pause journal, and they get weekly prompts, and their requirement is they write about whatever the prompt is. For example, the very first prompt we had was travel, and that was it. Just write about your travel experience, because these are international kids. They're used to traveling, and it was really different traveling from Indonesia back to the States or Australia or Canada or wherever it was that they were going. And so giving them a place to just write what their actual experience was, and then their task is to follow up and find articles. And I've been encouraging them to find articles that support the experience that they had, but also offering a different viewpoint. And bit by bit, over the weeks that we've been doing this, we've been finding that there's a lot of incorrect information out there. There's a lot of information that's shared as fact that's actually a knee-jerk reaction, and it's not actually true. So what I'm really proud of is that this current event side of our social studies has really blossomed, and the kids feel like they are a part of history. And so I feel like that's what Megan was saying, like by studying the economics of the pandemic, we're putting the kids in the role of historian in the middle of a major historical event. And so I think my middle school students are really understanding now the power and importance of primary sources, and comparing primary sources and understanding the perspectives that different people bring to a shared event.
It's so important. And I mean, a combination of like the interdisciplinary, the SDG goals, the C3, IB, all of these things, like they've never been more relevant than right now, and helping our students make connections that we're all interconnected. And it's so, so important. We have a series of resources that I have to add into the chat as well, but I want to keep us going as well, so we have questions at the end from all the participants. So I'm going to move us on to our next question on what is the best way to approach the curriculum in the fall, and what can be done in between now and then to help get our students prepared. They've had a variety of learning experiences, and as we've talked about, the social emotional pieces as well. Justin, would you like to start us with that question?
Yeah, I feel it's a whopper of a question, but I think, again, something that's illuminated through this part is just the power of the social and emotional piece. And I think, you know, we have to really start from there. And I think any curriculum really has to focus on the learner itself. I think, you know, we're in a time and place where maybe Frederick Taylor had its way in education, and you know, we have to start looking at, okay, curricula around the world are quite obese, and how can we start thinning it out purposefully? And you know, there's so many great curricular models out there that are a little bit more conceptual, and I guess would have more transfer for this century and beyond. So I think it's a good point post-pandemic, or the new normal, to really have that that time and place for change. So yeah, your stakeholders are obviously the most important. So starting from that standpoint, a social emotional one, and thinking a bit more conceptual. So I mean, ISTE offers a good framework. We can always think of things to add, but taking away, I think, is the hardest part.
Fantastic. And I can't remember who wants to go next. Evelyn, did you want to go next?
Sure. I think from the standpoint of the teacher's responsibility to the student to help them prepare for next year, not thinking so much on the curricular side, but thinking about making sure that the kids are ready for this. I think we need to spend time reflecting with the kids as the school year winds down about the things that that they learned about themselves. I think it was mentioned earlier, like understanding what type of learner you are, understanding you know, what your struggles were with online learning, and understanding that this could happen again. And so even just the simple, like, write a letter to yourself pre-pandemic, what would you advise your pre-pandemic self about the school year? But also, you know, even doing activities like one of our math teachers, she's amazing. She had the kids early on. She told them, pick a skill you've always wanted to learn, a simple skill, and learn it. And I want you to write down how long it took you to learn it. How did you learn it? Did you use YouTube videos? Did you read? Did you need to see somebody show you, you know, in the room with you? So helping the kids get to know what kind of learners they are, so that if this happens again, or if they're in a hybrid situation next year, they feel confident about advocating for themselves and making sure they have what they need.
I think it's important for us also to remember, like, people keep, for some reason, talking about like the deficit, like, oh, well, kids come back to us not having stuff. What about all the stuff they've learned and the areas where they flourish? Tara, I know you're itching to get in here, so let's hear what you have to say.
Well, I know, because you guys are saying such great things, and it just, and so I'd like to start with the last thing, Dana, in terms of always having an asset model base. It's unfortunate in education. I think it's one of the big flaws that we have as we learn to become teachers, that our brains just work in the negative naturally, but that we work in a deficit model. Becoming a reading recovery teacher was one of the most amazing experiences for me to become an assets-based teacher, because you do a battery of assessment, and as you analyze it, you're not allowed to write down anything they cannot do. It must all be about what they can do, and it's so powerful. So we really do need to think of those assets. You know, when I look to next year, I think I kind of imagine the classroom, it's going to be almost like teaching a multi-age classroom, right? So even if it's just a bunch of second graders, because of all the different experiences, they're going to be in many different places. And on that note, I think that educators really need to kind of put their coaching hats on and think about how they're going to support the parents. It's a huge piece. We almost need to have an orientation for them, okay? Because they're the ones doing it if we're still in this situation, and we're coaching. And there was we know a lot of stuff parents don't know, and I guess the whole world has figured that out now. But when you ask an average parent to look at a first grader's persuasive writing and find the words that make it persuasive, it's a little bit, they get it taken back. So we really need to remember, in order to really serve the kids socially, emotionally, as well as in their academic knowledge, supporting and coaching and stewarding that parent is going to be important.
I agree. And one of the things that you said too is, we're going to get students back who are in all different levels. And I feel like this is just shining a light on what we've had in our classrooms for so long, is our students have been in all different places, and the need for us to reach them where they are and help them get to wherever they need to go next, it's just shining a light on that so much. Laura, go ahead, Justin.
Sorry, one thing I can say, having, I guess, the luxury of having 18 of my students back for the last week and a half, some of the things that really identify, I guess, in the new normal is, I think the students have amazing perseverance. B, I think, they have this newfound knowledge of themselves as learners. So I think they have this metacognition of, how do I learn best on my own, and what choices do I make to make the right decisions? And I think they're much better advocates. I also just think they have this also extreme appreciation for that social constructivist element of school. Probably Piaget, singing his praises in his grave, of just, all the value that school brings. So that's awesome to see, and that plays on the heartstrings. So
100%. Laura, I want to make sure we have a chance to go into the Q&A, and I know you've been looking at all the questions coming in through the Q&A, so you're ready to go?
I am. I will say that today's is very challenging because we've had so many great questions, but they're kind of distinct from one another. But if I look for trends, as I usually try to do, I think that as we are and all of our students are living history right now, they're becoming these living time capsules of COVID-19. And I think you all have shared so much about how you're not only activating background knowledge for English language arts and social studies, but how you're working to build that essential background knowledge with your students. From anything from short and spirited videos with characters and costumes, your really thoughtful use of one-on-one conferences, the way that you're customizing learning for and with your kids based on what you know is relevant to them. I think people just want to hear more about that. So there's a couple of ideas maybe we can touch on here in the Q&A. One of them is just to hear more about what you find are the pros and cons of asynchronous and synchronous classes. The other would be just platforms or ideas, additional ideas that you have found work in igniting discussion and collaboration. So maybe let's start with the asynchronous and synchronous classes, just things that you found, sort of pros and cons, or things that work, or when it really is helpful to have an asynchronous video, and when it's been more essential that you have the kids right with you for a synchronous time. Anyone like to jump in on that asynchronous? Megan, thank you.
So we actually kind of did a combination of that.
Okay.
Each day, the day before, the students would get a learning grid that had videos and the lessons for the next day. And then the following day, the kids would meet on Zoom. And what I would do is I would have, like I said earlier, I would have a morning meeting. So it would last about 20 minutes. And then I would do a whole class lesson that lasted probably between 20-30 minutes. I would also, I would see on the learning grid for that day, what was kind of the biggest focus and where I would predict where kids would have challenges.
Yeah.
And it would also give me an opportunity to have educational talks with the kids so they could have those conversations with each other. I would use breakout rooms I would prompt them with different questions and have breakout rooms. It gave me opportunities, like when they were doing writing just the other day, they read their writing to each other and they gave each other feedback. So I was trying to incorporate some things in the classroom that I was trying to incorporate some things via Zoom that I would try to do in the classroom. And at times it was hard. After 15 weeks, piece of cake. So it's, it's one of those things where I think the more comfortable we get with it, the kids have gotten into a routine. That's a big thing is they have a routine and they know what to expect. And so after I do my whole group lesson, I do have some read aloud time and then I do a small group. So based on their work from previous days, I will pull a small group. So I might see that some kids might need work with paragraph structure or using quotations when they're writing. And so I would pull a small group. I would use some of their own text and we would go through what that would look like. And then I would give them time to work on their own. And then they could have some time to ask questions. So in the asynchronous part of it, where they were doing it on their own, they always had the opportunity to ask me questions either during that time, or they could just send me a quick G chat and say, hey, can we get on Zoom real fast? And that was really nice.
So thoughtful. I'd love to be your teammate. That's great. Anyone else? Evelyn, thank you. I want to be your teammate. So
thank you. So as far as synchronous versus asynchronous, as I said, we all left and we spread out all over the world. So we literally have students in Australia, Asia, all across the US and Canada. So having a synchronous class meeting becomes virtually impossible. And then part of our team of teachers is in Europe. So we span the entire globe. So as I mentioned earlier, we have one big middle school meetup every Monday evening, my time, which is Tuesday morning for the other side of the world, where we all get together. And that was kind of how we were doing it in the middle school anyway. We didn't do the daily meetings, but we did have a big weekly meeting. And then for math, I know the math teachers are doing synchronous lessons because they need all of the kids together at one time to introduce the concept or to troubleshoot after the kids have been working on their own. Whereas for language arts and social studies, I'm finding that I can give them, because we have a relationship built and they know the routines of my class, I can send them a mini lesson in Google Slides, but I put audio on every slide. So they're reading what the lesson is, they're reading the instructions, but they can click on that button and I don't read it word for word for them. That would be terrible practice with slides. But I expand on it, I give clarification, I make silly jokes to try to make sure that there's a reason for them to click that button and hear me each time. But if they're overwhelmed and they don't want to click the button, they don't have to. One of the things that we're finding is because it's middle school and they have so many separate teachers, they are spending so many hours doing what we're doing right now, and it's exhausting. It wears on them so much. So I've tried to pull back and give them the opportunity to reach out to me. We have a one-on-one once a week, but beyond that, GChat is our friend, and we do lots of conversations that way.
Lots of wisdom on that. Justin, thank you.
Yeah, and I think something just to add to is just always being open to that feedback with your stakeholders. I think, listening to the parents and sending out, whether it be weekly or bi-weekly, and seeing what's working and just finding the voice with them. And I think you're going to find that you know, where you start off in week 1 or week 2 is going to look drastically different at week 13 or 14 or wherever you end up. But yeah, I think the common connection here is having both available. And I think Tara brought this up, is, you know, making Gardner happy and thinking about is how multi-sensory that you can make it. So screencasting, having the audio feature, making sure you're modeling, whether it be synchronously or asynchronously. Yeah, so as much as possible without the face-to-face element.
That's incredibly responsive too. I mean, I think you keep your kids with you because you're really building on listening, and that's, I love that. And as you said, staying connected with the parents. Let's move on to your ideas about just ways we can ignite and nurture dialogue, discussion, collaboration. Shared a lot of great ideas, and I think that sparked people to want to hear more. So anyone want to jump in on that? Collaboration, discussion. Tara? You're muted, sorry. You're muted.
I missed the question. That's what I was, because I was typing an answer to someone on the queue. Okay, I'm the bad student.
Totally understand. Ideas you guys have for igniting discussion, collaboration, dialogue between kids, between you and the kids. So we've got a lot of questions that kind of anchor around just, I think it's such a different vehicle that a lot of us are very humbled to know how to nurture the kind of classroom talk that we're used to in the online setting. So
yeah, we've had some in middle school. We've had some really interesting talks.
Yeah.
I think what everybody definitely needs to start with is levity. Make them laugh. Nobody wants to be serious all the time, and kids love to laugh. This is why I will teach boys how to read with Captain Underpants, because
absolutely,
it's such a motivator.
Yeah,
and can bring down some walls, so everyone's willing to be vulnerable in this strange space, because that's what's going to bring a good conversation.
Yeah.
And our students, we are lucky and blessed to have students from all over the world. And not only just all over the world, but have lived all over the world. So they have these secret identities that can become powerful conversations. We had a student who lived in Saigon, Justin, lived in Saigon for a long time. And of course, now this student lives in Africa, in Mozambique, and was very attuned to the prejudicial slurs of Asians, right? Because she's from the United States, but she carries a little Asian on the inside, right? Because she lived there for so long. So that became a discussion. And that can go many different ways. It went the way of discussing the prejudice amongst Asians and the misinformation, but it could also, you know, go a lot of other ways with identity and stuff like that. So if we can get them vulnerable and to share that.
Yeah, well, I think that's right. The subjects we teach give us such rich opportunities to capitalize and build upon the fact that these are third culture kids, and to honor that. And I love that. You're right. When you've lived somewhere, it may not be your family heritage, but you do embrace it in your heart, and it stays with you forever, having been a person who lived overseas as a girl. For sure. Hey, I want to thank you all so much for being with us. I'm going to hand it back to Dana now, but I just personally wanted to say thank you so much. I've learned a ton. I can't tell you how many notes I was taking, and I'm so excited. As we shared, we'll be sending all these resources to everybody on the webinar, but just as we are at a favorite restaurant with our favorite drink, having these conversations as professional friends, it's just meant the world to me. Thank you so much, and I'll pass it back over to Dana. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. I just want to say, you know, the amount of resources that are constantly shared is overwhelming, and I posted links to all our panelists' Twitter accounts if you want to continue to connect with them, and also to some hashtags that we follow to help us gain resources and to learn as well. And we're all just trying to help one another. You know, someone said to me quite recently, you know, what makes us experts is we've been doing something for 10 weeks or 20 weeks, but that still doesn't make us experts. Like, we're still learning as we go. And every time we have one of these webinars, we've been, I know I'm learning so much from all of you and from our participants and our panelists. And so it's been really helpful to help us connect with other educators. And we're only stronger when we're together and we help each other. And I think that's one thing that's always made me really proud to be an educator is we keep educating and we keep helping each other and learning, and it's such a giving community. So thank you. We are, after the end of the call, we'll be sending out the recording and links to all the resources and any additional resources as well. And just to put something on your radar, we know that the end of the school year is coming to a close for a lot of you. For some of you, it may have already finished up. And we've been trying to post these webinars each week. We will be giving you guys a little bit of a break. And as we do that, we are putting together a program to try to help do a deeper dive into each one of these subjects over the summer. And so we'll be sending out information about that in the next, in the coming days. Maybe it might take a week. We're still putting some final tweaks on that. But as you know, for each one of the questions, we could have gone an entire hour, 2 hours, 3 hours specifically about, you know, just how do you do, you know, high school social studies, you know, how do you do that? What does that look like? What does economics look like? What is, you know, AP US history? What is, you know, what does this look like in an IB? How do you do an extended essay in this context? You know, we know that these, that we can go deep into all these different areas. And so we're trying to answer as many questions as we can, but we can't always get to all of them. So we're doing, we're trying to develop something like that for all of you in the future, and we'll let you know about that as soon as we can. Thank you everyone for all of your time today. We really appreciate it, and for joining us. Some of you, some of the participants have been joining us every week, consistently every single Wednesday for 10+ weeks. So we really appreciate you taking the time and joining us, and we hope you continue to have a wonderful day. Goodbye everyone, and we'll wave and say goodbye. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.